Following fine line in your work, what you now need to do is look at adding marker pen. So we take away our fine line and our blue pencil. What we really need to do is use, for this sheet, one tone of marker, one colour of marker. So typically I would recommend either warm grey 3, W3, some manufacturers call this WG3, or C3 or CG3. In this instance, I'm going to use the warm one. The difference between warm and cool is that cool has slight elements of blue in it, and the warm has a slight brown quality. You can get N, which is a neutral grey, which has neither blue nor brown in it. So let's look to add marker. So the rule that we're going to follow, which is on this sheet here as an example, is that all edges are always dark. What we want to do is look at applying a light source either from the top left or the top right of our 2D shapes, our 3D forms. So I'm right-handed, I tend to add my light source from the top left. I do this also being right-handed because I work away from my body, work away in this way, therefore I don't smudge any marker by doing it that way. However, I do constantly turn the page round anyway. So we'll remove this out the way just for the moment. So here's our blank sheet, and what we want to do is look at using the chisel tip. So this is the chisel tip of the marker. Now different marker brands, different marker pens have got something else on the end. In this case, this is a Copic sketch pen. This has a brush. We're not worried about using that. It's more if we were doing kind of trying to emulate watercolors or for fashion design. So we'll use the chisel. We can use the point of the chisel or the flat part of the chisel to get different thicknesses of line. And what we want to do with markers is use the markers quickly. And by using them quickly, we're going to not therefore drag them across the page. So what I mean by that is, here is just a blank sheet again. What we don't want to do with the marker pen is try and just stop with our marker. That's not a very good one as it's clearly run out. So I'll just get a second pen and hopefully this one will work. Okay, okay, here we go. So what we want to do is try not to stop with the marker. If we stop with the marker as we're sketching, okay, we get these build-up of ink on here. The build-up of ink gives us almost like a DNA strand. We're trying to avoid that. We're also trying to avoid lots of small lines like this when we marker, or, you know, trying to marker almost like an artist would do very sketchy lines. We're trying to do long flowing lines. So if I just show you at this top part here now, so long flowing lines going across, trying to keep the lines parallel or straight. Okay, and we may get overlaps with the lines, and that's absolutely fine. That's actually what we're after. Okay, so long parallel lines. Of course, what we're going to do on this sheet is try to stop the marker in place so it's controlled. So in terms of control, perhaps it's to where the point where we want to go. And if we did that again, okay, we might not get exactly the same point, but if we get close to that point, then that's good. Okay, and bear in mind this will be our fine line. So easiest thing for me to do right now is just to demonstrate that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with our shape, and if you remember the basic rule is all edges are always dark. So I'm going to get my sheet, I'm going to turn it round, so markering just like sketching at the same angle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by adding more marker on this side, remembering that all edges are always dark and the light is coming from this side. So that side of this cylindrical form is going to be darker. I'm going to turn my work around. This is the top of my shape. So the top, I go across, thin line. At the bottom, I want to add more marker because usually when we sit an object on a piece of paper, the bottom is darker than the top because the top is closer to the light source. So we always add a little bit more marker on the bottom to help it sit on the page. And then on this side, where light hits it first, we'll just do a thin line. And that is our first coat. And now what I want to do is let it dry. The trick with marker pen is to ensure that you let it dry. And of course, the marker will run out if you let it dry with the top off. So I'm just going to pop the top back on there. Okay, so what I'm trying to do now is just assess my work and think, Okay, where am I going to add the marker next? Now, in reality, if I were marking my own work, I would now be marking this shape, or this shape, or this shape, or this shape. I would be moving on. That allows this to dry. Marker paper is great because it doesn't bleed. So it has a chalk inside the marker paper, so it stops the marker bleeding through onto the underneath surface. Normal paper, if you try and use markers on, will absorb all of the ink. So some ink evaporates, some sinks in. The second coat, a little bit less ink sits in the paper and a bit more evaporates, and so on. And we can do that 3 times. So that allows us to get 3 ranges of the same tone of marker. So I'm going to add again. I'm going to follow the same rules, but I'm not going to try and do exactly the same lines this time. And by doing that, I should get different tones of line, which makes the shape more interesting. So the first line I'm going to do, okay, same edge again, edge going over that edge again. All edges are always dark, and this time I'm just going to come in, I'm going to twist my pen here, I'm just going to add a thin line there, it's very faint, you can't really see. I'm going to turn around, I'm going to do the bottom of the object's darker, and I'm just going to do it at an angle here, so it meets the dark edge there. I'm going to turn it around once more, I'm going to go over my edge, I'm using the thin part, so I'm using it at a slight angle now. Then I'm going to turn again, and just do the top. Okay, and as you can see here, I'm not worried about actually coming outside of my shape. I could be more careful, but in this demonstration, I'm happy with just doing that. And now that needs to dry, and this time it needs to dry for about 40 seconds. If I start working this now, what will happen with the marker is it will just blend in together and give me a flat tone. What I'm really trying to get is the differences in the marker between light, a little bit darker again, very much darker, okay? And all of that gives the shape that you're rendering more interest. It makes the eye look at more things within that shape. So, as I've been talking now, of course, the ink has been evaporating, some of it soaking in, so we're ready to apply our third coat. So, top off again, so I'm going to just do a very thin coat at the top here and join it. I did a slight angle there, slight curve at the top just to join it to the darker side. Okay, turning it round. Now, let's add more tone on this darker side here, coming across, and it's just really up to you where you decide to add it. If I show you this one already, you can see that this one is different than this one. It is never the same. At the bottom, let's add a bit more. You can probably hear the marker because I'm starting to work the marker a little bit faster. And this time, just darken that edge, and I'll just do a faint line just on the inside there, and hopefully now you can see that I've just got 2 tones there. I'm going to put the top on, okay? Now what I would really do now is actually start on this one, but for the purposes just of this demonstration, what we then do is just using a black soft pencil. So this is a Faber-Castell black soft pencil. This is probably the best black pencil I have ever used, and it's one that I highly recommend. Polychromo black pencil. Incredibly soft, you can get a really good sharp edge. And also, and you might find this incredibly sad as well, because most pencil sharpeners do the same thing. This is a black wing long point pencil sharpener. Again, this happens to be the best pencil sharpener I've ever used. Designed for use with black wing pencils, which are considered the best. Okay, so just sharpen that, it gives me a much longer point, and then we just do a second one in here, which gives a really sharp point. Okay, so really nice, high quality pencil sharpener. And then what we want to do is just add, with a little bit of pencil shading, a little bit of tone. So we're just going to add here on the bottom. The reason we're doing this is because with marker, we've got 3 chances. We've got 3 goes with the marker pen. And we will never really, unless we use a darker tone, get it dark enough. So what we're going to do is just with a soft black pencil, just going to blend or fade the soft black pencil with the edge. And what we're trying to do here is, so you don't look at the rendered shape and immediately see black soft pencil. You look at it and you see it being darker on the bottom and at the side, because that's where we were trying to darken with the marker. Okay, and then it fading out. So it's about pressure with your fingers, about a light touch, nice and gentle, but also really looking at what you are doing as well and trying to think, how can I blend that so it's smooth? It doesn't take away from the marker, but looks good overall. So as you can see, I'm just doing a little bit here. Now, even though all edges are always dark, I could add a little bit here, but bear in mind that this is supposed to be our lightest side. I'm going to leave it. I'm just going to make sure that there's a little bit more here on the bottom, just so it looks like it sits on the page. Just spin that round. So this becomes more appropriate when we start looking at shadows. But I've done my marker here. I did a little bit up this side. I've gone up there and I've gone up there and I stopped there. Ideally, we don't just want to stop. We just need to make it fade in all areas. So we get a nicer look and finish with our markers if we can make it fade, perhaps something like that. So I'll quickly render this next shape. And in this one, what we're looking at doing is really looking at this. If I do that, it's the same shape. However, we've got the cone on the top, and the cone on the top is larger than the cylinder. Therefore, we'll cast shadow if our light source is coming from here. And these are the details which will really make the work stand out. So if I follow those rules again that I've just used on here, ignoring this at the top, I would start. Small bit of marker at the top. All edges are always dark. Let's go along this edge here. So darken on the edge, and let's just come in a little bit more like I did before. Let's spin it round. Bottom of the object is always darker, so let's go across that bottom and curve up. Let's curve on this side. Let's keep it thin on that side. So that's our first coat there. However, we have got this area which is, even though this is the top of our box, it's then under shadow. So what we're going to do is just curve it like we do at the bottom here, so it's casting a shadow. Then we'll treat the cone separately. So in doing the cone, we want all edges are always dark. So this edge is our light line, so a thin part of our marker. Let's just add a little bit there. Turn our work around. This time, following the edge here, we want it thicker. And what we've got to do is gradually change the angle. Okay, because this is a cone shape. So you can see a change with my marker, something like that. And just like this one, where the bottom of the object is darker, the bottom of the object is darker. So we'll go across like so, and we'll just curve it onto this side. So that is our first coat with the marker pen. That needs to dry is the critical part. So while that's just drying, I'll quickly start this one. Same principle. We treat each of them as separate things, separate shapes, separate forms. However, this one we've got two added extras. We've got this bit here, which is a chamfered edge going in, and we've got what is our handle. So we're going to treat them separately, but then as a whole for shadow. So I'll start with the bottom. So we'll do a top bit here. We know it's in shadow, it's underneath this bit, so we can add a curve. We'll turn it round, we'll add a little bit coming in. The bottom of the object is always darker, so we'll add the bottom and curve up, and we'll add a little bit on this side. Then all edges are always dark. So I'm going to start on this side. I'm going to start though from here, this line, at an angle. Okay, so we've got our line in to begin with. Thin at the top, going across, then turning it round. This edge, what we want to do is we want that thicker edge going down, and like the cone, we want to make it go a little bit wider. And where we've got our line, which is the top of the chamfer, we're going to go across to add a bit of marker there. However, we have also got the bottom of our shape, so we're going to add in the bottom, almost trying to follow like our rules here with the edges. Let's get dark edge going across there, a little bit here, and thin at the top. So you could almost, this line, treat it as like the marker go both sides of that line. Then we've got our handle, so treating our handle separately, bottom of the object, let's go across the bottom. Let's do our darker side here. Then let's do a thin line for the top and thin on this side. However, this part here now would be underneath here, so therefore shadow would be cast. So what we want to do is darken and just darken that. So whilst we've done that, this one has now dried. So now we can go back to this and do our second coat. So I'm going to do this quite quickly, okay, because markers should be quick. So darken over the edge, okay, the darkest edge, let's add a bit more marker, let's add a bit more marker over, so we've got lots of different tones. Let's add a little bit to the base, then let's do our cone at the top, so there's that side, here's our thin side, don't want to add too much. What I'm trying to do though now is let's try and get a little line in our top of our cone, so like a difference here with the marker. That one's done for a second coat. While that one's now drying, let's come back to this one. Let's try and get a dark edge just on this side. So I'm using the thin part of the marker pen there. Okay, thin on the top also. Now let's try and add a bit more marker on this side. Then let's a bit more on the bottom. Let's add some underneath. So you can see now, as I start speeding up with the process of markers, okay, the process should be very fast. Now, my marker pen is actually really struggling with putting down the ink. So I probably won't be able to get much darker. I'll try again in a minute with this one, but that's where we use the soft black pencil, because the soft black pencil is really going to allow us the depth. So very, very quickly, I'll have my third layer on here, just trying to get a little bit more depth, like so. Okay, and on the base, and on this side here. So I'm just going to turn my marker. Okay, while I've done that, let's just go around here. You can hear how squeaky my marker is, actually showing you how little ink it has left. Okay. So, and then soft black pencil. Soft black pencil, what I want to do now is start picking out the details. So we know that this is going to have shadow underneath. So shadow underneath, and as you can see, immediately I do that, this kind of, it looks like it comes forward. So we're almost becoming 2.5D is how I refer to this. It's not 3D because it's a 2D sketch, but it starts to make a 2D sketch look a little bit more convincing that it's a 3D form. Therefore, it's almost like 2.5D. So I'm just trying to blend to the bottom, because we always want to try and get our fade into our line. Okay, let's say something like that. But I also just want to do that little bottom corner, so it always tries to fade. And then I still have the cone, and the cone is a separate shape, and I would normally apply the same rule. So I would use my soft black marker, soft black pencil, just on this side here, just make it fade a little bit like that. So it starts to give me more depth. Okay, so let's just check if you're not happy with the fade. I wasn't happy then, so let's just make it fade a little bit more. So on here, of course, some of the things that we can do is start to look to use the chamfer as a guideline. Add a little bit of soft black pencil. I could add a little bit of shadow underneath here, as we know that that casts shadow, and the base on this side. So I'm speeding up a little bit now just to try and get this demonstration done for you. So just add a little bit on the bottom of my object. So trying to remember those rules, all edges are always dark. So this one, this has a particular shadow cast here underneath the handle. So what I tend to do is I add on the handle just at the top, and then I just make it come down a little bit further, let's say like that. So you can see there is the shadow, but then what I want to do is just blend in, of course, that edge. So we've got a darker edge, a little bit darker on the top, and it's these little details that really help enhance your work. Now, you don't have to use a soft black pencil, but it can really help make your work pop off the page a little bit more, almost by casting shadow. So there you can see there's the first 3 of a sheet, and that's just taken a little bit further.